Well, hi, it's the next day and I got Dolene out of the kitchen this morning and she had only risen, she had only doubled. And so I moved this rubber band up to where she was when she had doubled. And while I took the kids to school, I put her in the microwave with the light on underneath. And this is how much she grew just in an hour and a half of me putting her in there. So she had already doubled in size. I put her in a warm spot and she kept growing. First things first, take my ring off. Things I use to mix up my bread. Kitchen scale, cheapy scale, big old bowl. I have a thermometer because I like to know what's going on, and something to mix it with. This is a Danish dough whisk. You can use a fork, doesn't matter. First, I'm gonna turn on my scale, make it at 0, make sure it's on grams on the scale. And I'm gonna tear her out so that she's 0. All right, you ready? This is super, super difficult. First thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna sniff my starter. If it smells like alcohol or fingernail polish remover or kind of smells acidy, dump half out, feed it again so that you get it to smelling nice and sweet. Because if it smells acidic, your bread is going to taste like a penny, which some people really dig about sourdough. Not my favorite. Okay, mine smells like bread dough already. So I'm going to dump her in. And I'm not going to be precise about it. Although the recipe I think calls for 200 grams. What I have found out is the more starter you have, the faster your bread will ferment. All right, so I'm at 186 grams and my jar still has some in it. It's just a little bit. And so instead of doing dishes, because who wants to do that? This is what I use to get my warm water. The recipe calls for 700 grams of warm water. So I'm going to tear out my scale to 0 again. And I'm going to put my warm water in here and shake it up so that I can get all that crap out of there. Okay, so I've got it filled up. Put my lid on, carefully agitate. This cleans the inside of your jar, gets the rest of that fed starter out of there. And pour that in here. So I'm looking for 750. That took me to 700. My jar is pretty clean. See what I did there? Now I'm going to take something, anything, a whisk, and whisk this together just like we did when we mixed up the starter and water. Because we're just doing this again, only in a bigger volume. And you're gonna mix it until it is milky. Something that I do that not everybody does, and you don't have to do this. Sourdough is literally flour, water, salt, and starter. But I don't like that really crunchy crust on my bread. So I add whatever oil I have on hand. I add like a tablespoon, maybe. Whatever that was. There you go. And that helps your bread not have that really thick, hard, crunchy crust. Now, if you like that crunchy crust, don't put that in there. At this point, you can also add like a tablespoon of honey if you want it to be a little sweeter. It does not make it super sweet. Doesn't. But it does help with it not being so crunchy and hard. And it's a nice flavor. We're going to add in 1,000 grams of flour. I have learned that 1,000 grams is like a half a bag of 5-pound flour. It's gonna look like a lot. 600, 991. Okay, I went a little overboard. 1,033 grams. Am I worried about it? Not really, because it's all just a guideline. And so the other thing is I mix my salt in with my flour, because I learned that if I mix my salt in with my liquid, that it makes, I don't know what it does, but it coagulates the starter and it makes it lumpy. It grosses me out. All right, so this is actually specialty sea salt, but you don't have to do this. Between 22 and 30 grams. 25. Again, you don't want to go over like 30 because it would be super salty, but it's, like I said, it's all a ratio. So now all your ingredients are in here. We're gonna take our thing, we're gonna mix it around. Let me show you what it looks like. It just looks like regular old flour, but as you mix it, it will start to get lumpy. So I've got it mixed up to a shaggy dough, what they talk about as a shaggy dough. This is what that looks like. But you can see that there's still flour in here that hasn't been moistened. I keep working it until it's too difficult to work with. And then at this point, you can use your hands, or I have one of these fancy, not really, bench scrapers that came in a 4-pack on Amazon for like 10 bucks. So I just scrape out all that dough. And then I actually soak this in the jar that I made my starter in so that all of that comes off. Otherwise, it can get kind of gunky and dry up. So I use this and I scrape down the sides, and then I pick up from the bottom, lift it up to the top. Pick up, lift. So I'm basically just mixing from the bottom so that all of that flour has a chance to get wet. As a side note, you can totally do this in your electric mixer, or like your stand mixer. You can put all the ingredients in your bowl and turn the dough hook on and let it roll. The only thing I have found with that is sometimes my dough can feel a little wet when I do that. And so I end up adding a little more flour. And then I have to also be careful because my mixer is kind of small. And so that dough can like start creeping up onto the dough hook and then onto the motor, and I don't like that. So here it is. She's a shaggy. She literally looks like biscuit dough right now. She's not smooth. I haven't really kneaded her. I just mixed the wet and the dry. And guess what I'm gonna do with her now? I'm gonna put a towel on her and leave her alone until I think about her again. That'll probably be a good hour because I'll forget. And then I'll come back and do a couple stretch and folds. Okay. I'm gonna let her sit a good 45 minutes and then I'll come back and we'll flip her around a little bit. Oh, I almost forgot. But I never knew how long I should leave my dough out because it has to, this is called bulk ferment. And so I read that if you take its temperature and it is above 80 degrees, that it only needs like 4 or 5 hours. But mine is at 81 degrees because of my warm water. I know it's gonna lose some warmth because of the temperature it is in my house. So I'm gonna say that it's not 80 degrees. It won't stay that way. So I'll probably leave this on my counter for 6 hours today. No more than 8. And the longer I leave it on my counter, the more time it gives this yeast to eat up that flour and digest that flour, which gives you a fluffier rise on your bread, but also makes it easier for you to digest. Again, gut healthy. So, see you in an hour. Oh, I should tell you, it is 8:54, so we'll actually see what time I come back.